grids and levels. Okay, this is what we are going to be looking at in this video. I've opened up a brand new architectural template. That's going File, New, Project, and then choosing the architectural template. Just cancel that. And then we get to this familiar-ish view now. We can see we've got two levels, and for the purposes of this project, we need more than two levels. We need a ground level, we need the first floor level, we need a second floor level, and we need the roof level. Okay, so there's a 3-story building in total. And way to do the levels is to use the elevation. Now we can actually use the 3D view. In this we can create another level by holding down the control key and dragging on that. That'll create another level. And that puts that level in here. But what you probably can't notice at the moment is this has got a black infill, and these have got blue infills. It's not very clear. Maybe if I move it slightly flatter. And there's a significant difference between a black infill and a blue infill, in so much as if we look at the blue infills, we can see that there's floor plans associated with them. But the black infill, because we created it from just effectively copying the one inside the project at the moment, I can do the same thing, just click and hold and drag. It's really useful to create reference planes, but if you want to generate floor plans from them, then it's not actually doing it straight off the bat. Okay, so I'm going to select these two by using that crossing window technique, just hitting delete. Nothing else sort of disappears. I don't get any warnings to say that levels are going to, or floor plans are going to disappear, because it didn't create any floor plans. So I'm going to use the old sort of school method and go into the east elevation. The north, south, or west would do exactly the same thing. And I'm going to zoom out a bit because these are a little bit short. Our building is going to be 25 meters by 25 meters, or at least that's the sort of the intersections of the grid will be at 5 meter intervals. And this is only currently spanning a distance of approximately 5 meters. So this needs to be much further across. So if I click on one of these, either one doesn't matter, we'll also notice that it says 3D at this point. I'll probably zoom in a little bit into this so you can see what this is saying. I can't roll my cursor in, so it doesn't make it any bigger, but on the post-production on the videos, I can sort of zoom into this area so you can see what's going on with this. The 3D bit means that these lines are linked in sort of a 3D sort of framework. If you imagine, again, I'll demonstrate this by looking at it in 3D. We can see that these were selected. We can see this bit and this bit aren't currently connected. And if I drag that backwards and forwards, we can see that there's a difference in size to them. Now, if I go into the west elevation, we'll probably see a difference. Oh, there's even level 4 in there as well, which needs to come out. We can see a difference in these things. That's because the base plane has moved from one to the other. So I need to reconcile that by just dragging these back over. And the reason we want these connected is because it's just easier to move them. So you basically move that box independent of each of the other objects. If I wanted to move them separately, then I could just click on the 3D to change it to 2D, and then I can move this independently. The only problem with doing that, it's a bit of a pain to get back to 3D sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my east elevation, and I'm just going to zoom out a bit. I'm going to click on one of these. I'm going to drag it out about that big, and I'll just put a little measure on it just to see. That's 31 meters. That's fine. So I've got level 0, level 1, and then I'm going to use the level marker. I'm not going to copy this. I'm going to use the level marker, and I'm going to hover over this edge, and so I see that blue line, and it doesn't matter how high these things are at the moment. I'll just make it obviously too big, and I can put another one in, and then I'll put another one in like that. Okay, because I want to show you how you can adjust the levels on these things anyway. So by clicking on this one, I want to move this down 4 meters above this one. And what we're seeing here is basically a level at sort of the ground line or the ground plane of 0. Now you have to imagine that there's this point in 3D space which is sitting at an origin somewhere on this in this model in the 3D environment, and it has to start somewhere. So this is on the ground plane, or the level 0 plane, let's say. This next one is 4 meters up from this one. And if I click on this line, then we can see there's 4 meters there. If I click on this one, this reading here is a combination of 4 meters plus the 7,600. So this will be 11,600. But I want this to be 4 meters above this. So I've got an option here. I can either click on that and change that to 4 meters, or I could have come into this box, clicked on that and changed that to 8 meters, which is the addition of 4 meters. So it depends on how good you are at mental arithmetic to add these up for your basic sort of levels. I'm going to just click on this one, 4 meters again. In fact, that was 400. So I'm just going to select that if I can. Can't seem to get this. I'll have to zoom right in. There you go. So it doesn't make it any bigger, but it does make the gap between them bigger. So now I've got 1 level, 2 levels, 3 levels. And I think that's it. I haven't checked the brief for a while, so I'll leave it at this for the moment. But this is creating those grid lines. And again, they're all linked nicely like so. Now, this has a corresponding view. I'm on the west view at the moment. If I go to my east view, in fact, they've worked out quite nicely. Sometimes they are still looking a bit ragged. And the way to clean that up is if you click around all of them, like so, then we look at the modify ribbon, and we've got this thing called propagate extents. If you're ever struggling with these things not quite tying through, then we can propagate 3D extents and click on west elevation and then say OK. What that means is the box now that's sort of been generated by this the outline of this, you've got to imagine there's this 3D cube in space, that's now extended out to the west elevation. And similarly, if I go to the north elevation, we can see now that we've got these grid lines here. I'm going to click on one of them and drag it out about 30 odd meters. Again, let's just check that. That's 42, so I'll bring it in a bit. Something like that, that'll be fine. And again, I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to propagate extents to the south elevation. And there you go. So if I look in 3D now, we should have these things extending to the same positions. Okay, so that's really what that's done. So that's all tidy. Now I'm going to go to a floor plan view. You also notice that if I go back to the east elevation, there's not a black marker on any of these. What we do have, however, is a level in sort of inconsistency. This is level 1, this is level 5, this is level 6. And that's simply because when I created or dragged off the other 2 levels, then they were called level 2 and level 3 and obviously level 4. And now these are the next ones in the stack. I can change these, and what I'm going to do is change the names of these things. So level 0, I'm going to click on it once and then click on it a second time and call this ground floor. And it says here, would you like to rename the corresponding views? And that's going to rename them up here. I'm going to say yes. And then this is going to be first floor. And I'm going to click away from that and say yes. And then second floor. That says second floor. Yes, I could get rid of that box by ticking on the thing that says, do you want to see this again? But it's useful to show it when I'm producing these things. And then we'll call this roof for now, just in case I've got it right. I think, however, there might be another level up on top of this. But anyway, having just checked, I can assure you that this is correct. So ground level, level 1, level 2, and level roof. Now we're going to need to go into a floor plan. So let's pick ground floor. And we're going to use the grid tool. So it's a very similar principle. Click on the grid and we've got this option, draw a line. We could have a curved grid, or we could pick other elements, or we could create a curve around a point. So I'm just going to come into this zone and I'm going to click there and come down to this point here. Grid line 1. And then I'm going to come across, and if I get 5 meters, then it's going to save me having to adjust it. So I'm just hovering over the end. I'm not clicking anything. I've just hovered over the end, and then I've got that little blue line stretching out 5 meters, click, and then come down to the second one. Similar thing. Five meters, 5 meters, and another 5 meters, like so. Okay, so that's 5 meters there. We've got a little bit of an issue there with this marker sort of sitting over this one, but we'll deal with that in a second. Then we're going to come this way. So I'm going to click this side first, drag it over. I notice this is saying 6. So what I'm going to do before I create the rest of them is just click inside this. Now, see my cursor still that cross for creating more grid lines. I'm just going to click on this number and I'm going to change it to the letter A and then click outside it. So that's now changed to the letter A, but my cursor is still looking like this. There's no need for me to hit escape and then make the amendments and then come back into it. I can then come down on this line. And now this automatically changes to B. This will be C, D, and E will follow. And it doesn't matter that they are not quite sitting over each other. As long as we've got that relationship between these ends and these ends, it just means now that I can click on one of these and drag that up a bit and drag that bubble down a bit. What I now need to do, because these are my elevation markers, I need to move these to a point where they're not going to get in the way of the model and I'll be able to see everything around it, including landscaping. So what I'm going to do is click and drag around this whole thing. If I click and drag this way, then I'm selecting these grid lines. I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to come around in this direction and drag that out a bit, drag this up a bit, drag this one down a bit, and drag this one out a bit. And then if you can remember what I also need to do, the far clip offset for each of these, that's too short. So if I was viewing this elevation, it would stop at this point. So I need to drag that down. And just keep doing the same thing. So I create this visual box which is going to capture all the information inside this zone. Okay, so that's that bit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D, E. That's perfect. Now we're just going to check that this is going to be the same on each of the other levels. So first floor, I get the same grid pattern. The roof, I get the same grid pattern. Second floor, that's fine. On the site view, I see that, and I see this thing in the middle. This is 0, 0, effectively, for all intents and purposes. And there's two little symbols. There's a circle symbol and a triangle symbol. One represents the site, and one represents the project. Okay, so we'll leave that for the moment. We'll come back to that when we look at the site plan and the orientation. But for now, we'll just ignore it, and we'll go back to our ground floor. What I might do in the meantime is just rename my levels. 0, 1 ground floor. We can also see here that we've lost a bit of continuity. So we need to click on that, drag that to there, drag these in. And then we can propagate extents to the west. We can click on this one, drag this down. It's very important that you get these things to look right, because you don't want a messy drawing with sort of lines all over the place. And then we'll go to the north elevation, and once again take those across, take these up, drop this down, select all my levels, propagate extends to the south, and that should be fine. So that has effectively set up our project. This is the completion of the homework for the first week. Now, before we wrap everything up, there's a few other little bits and pieces that we need to know, apart from the color change. One of them is to do with, if we select this thing, and I zoom in on this, we can see several bits and pieces on this. We've got the 3D marker, which we've looked at previously. If I click on that and change it to 2D, then it no longer retains its link with the rest of them. So I can now drag this out, and that's a separate link. You can see the 3D bubble there, but there's a tiny little dot there that needs to be dragged back into that bubble for it to get its 3D back. Okay, if I click on it again, take it out to 2D, and I just click on that, it doesn't actually retain the 3D status that it did before. You've got to drag it back to there. That can be really problematic. There's lots of other little subtleties with this, which I'm not going to go into at the moment, but they're all to do with crop boxes and view range boxes and all that sort of stuff. So you can lose your grids from floor plans and elevations quite easily. Okay, so if we get to that situation, or someone's got to that situation, then please use the sort of chat feature on Aula, and I can then sort of explain how to get out of it. Okay, it can be tricky. Okay, so that's one thing. Let's just zoom back into this. Sorry, let's look at all the bits and pieces we got. We got this padlock. This is locking the link to all the others. If I uncheck that, then I can still retain the 3D-ness of it, but it's not linking back with these. So there is a subtle difference between 2D and 3D, and you really want these to sort of work independently. But maybe you've got a floor plan which sort of comes out the upper floors are sort of bigger than the smaller floors, or the smaller floors are bigger than the upper floors, and you don't want this grid or level pattern to sort of stay aligned, then maybe you want to unlock these and move them independently, but also retaining that 3D connectivity. Another thing, you've got this thing here, which is the elbow. So I can add an elbow. Sometimes when you're using different scales, then the elbow thing means that you can move these away from each other, which is a really useful thing. Okay, to get rid of the elbow, just select the line and then bring that grip back down to straighten us up. And then that gets rid of the elbow and just leaves you with the symbol to add elbow. And then you've got this thing here that either hides it or reveals it. That's the toggle, visual toggle button on or off. And that's really all you need to know about those things. we've got a very similar thing going on here. Okay, show it, don't show it, add an elbow, straighten it up, lock it or unlock it. Okay, you still got that 3D 2D thing as well, which needs a couple of hours explanation in itself. I think that should be enough stuff for you to be getting on with. Next, we'll be adding some beams and some columns, so then we can start building a structure. But that's really up to you to go into a plan view, and then you decide where you want to put your 20 columns, bearing in mind that 9 of them need to be a core. So whether they're this 9 or whether they're 9 in a corner or sort of 9 around here somewhere, that's entirely up to you where you decide to put the core. But we do need a structural core of 9 columns in here. Okay, so I'll leave that for you to decide. Maybe have a little sketch of something, and then we can come back and put the columns and beams in part 2 of week 2's tasks.